Amen.
Amen. Bless you. Thank you so much. Folks, it's been amazing to be with you over the weekend, and this place has so many. Oh, hang on a minute. I'm so sorry. I can't believe that. It's Lisa. Hang on a sec. I told you not to ring me at work. Yes, of course I love you. I could have told you that a couple of minutes ago over there. Put the phone down. Sorry, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. It's been a while since we saw each other. Oh, hang on a minute, it's going off again. Oh, hang on a sec. Oh, it's not Lisa. Oh, it's Brianna. Oh, look. Oh, bless her. It's on Instagram. She's showing me what she had for brunch. Can you see? She's showing me what she had for her breakfast this morning. Oh, amazing. So embarrassing. Oh, hang on a sec. Ken Benjamin on Twitter, my new best friend. Anyway, he's letting me, it's an event he's doing next week, one of his clever friends. We're starting to think tonight about how we get distracted by, we genuinely are thinking about how we get distracted by social media. I thought for this last session, we did a session this morning on identity theft and thought about how we can kind of be stolen out by success, what the world says success is. And I thought tonight, and Mark says to try and use it as a bit of a pilot for how this particular gathering is going to develop and evolve as you come together as a church on Sunday evenings, if this is the gathering you come to, that we might try and do something this evening called theological reflection, which I know will excite you no end to hear a phrase like that. But it's basically just how do we think about the culture around us and involve God in that thing. I genuinely wish somebody had helped me to do this when I started out as a Christian. Because it's one of the things I've really struggled with, because I think in church life often we study the word together and it does make application into our daily life. But I had no real idea of how do you think about, I don't know, films you watch or what you're looking at on Netflix, or what's going on at work, or what happens in school and the trends that are going on. How do you think about those from your faith perspective? So because I'd run out of ideas for this weekend, I thought we'd do it all together. No, that's not true. But I genuinely thought we'd have a go at doing this together and try and do a theological reflection as a large group, with the idea being that we work on it together and how we get sidetracked by social media. Now, as soon as I say that, some of you might say, I don't even use social media. But the idea being that what we're trying to practice and what we've tried to do a little bit over this weekend is, how can we learn together intergenerationally? How can we listen to one another? So even if you don't generally use social media, or even if I use that phrase, you think, I don't even know what it is, what we'll try and do in a moment is just maybe you might even want to shuffle a little bit, just because we're going to turn and kind of work with those that are around us to try and talk some of this through and think about it. So maybe I'll give you I bet nobody will move because I know what we're like in church life, but you're like, no, I found my seat, I'm in. That's fine. You can stay with it. But if you need to shuffle in a minute to get with somebody that's that you think it'd just be good to have this kind of discussion with, then do move and be with them. There's a great verse in the Bible. I haven't got a clicker up here, so if you'd click on just for the next slide. This is from Romans chapter 12, verses 1 and 2. And Paul has been speaking about the big picture of the gospel, and then he begins to make application of it. And he says, one of the phrases is, don't fit into your culture. Now, your culture, everything has a culture. A culture, it's a big word in some ways, but your family has a culture. It has a way of doing things. And so your school has a way of doing things. Your workplace has a way of doing things. This church has a way of doing things. There's a culture, a way of doing things, the way we do things around here, that you do them. This town has a way of doing things. It has a particular culture about it. And what Paul says is, don't fit into that without thinking about it. Just before that, he says this. Just go on to the next one. So this is from the Message paraphrase, and I think it's such a powerful verse, particularly thinking about some of the things we've been thinking about over this weekend, where he says, so here's what I want you to do. God helping you take your everyday, ordinary life, your sleeping, eating, going to work, and walking around life, and place it before God as an offering. Embracing what God does for you is the best thing you can do for him. Don't become so well adjusted to your culture that you fit into it without even thinking. Do you know, when generally speaking, like when I was at school, I fitted into my culture without thinking about it. When I went into the world of work, when I first went into building work, I fitted into the culture of that without particularly thinking about it. And when you do it like that, it tends to affect you more than you affect it. And so it's saying to us, and also this is saying to us, I want you to take your everyday, ordinary life and I want you to offer it to me. Your everyday things that you do. This is your worship to me. This is the place where we live out what we believe. And we want to be a community, don't we, with this next slide? We want to be a community that are rooted and growing and sowing. That one of the things for you as a church community, and just try and hear that as you begin to evolve and develop that as a church, as the church has that vision with that picture of the dandelion, to be a community that has its roots going down into the gospel, into Christ, and then growing in that as a community, and then in all those places, like in the song that Mark's written for you, that thinking about how you kind of get sown and seeded in all sorts of different places, in different schools and different work contexts, different streets where you live and different places where you socialize and so on, like all those different places. And I love that image of like wildflowers, how he's picked up on the dandelion thing, like wildflowers, you grow there to kind of to bless those that are around you. To live a different, distinctive kind of life, to stand out to those that are around you. So in terms of thinking about this particular topic tonight, let's click on to the next one. Just this really simple way of thinking something through. Dave Benson developed this just recently at LICC, and the first thing is that we need to learn to listen to the world around us, to listen to what's going on. And that could be anything, just noticing, thinking, oh, why is that film popular at the moment? Or what do I hear going on? Or what do I notice about the culture around me? Tonight we're thinking about social media, but even in that, and in the listening stage of it, thinking, well, what's my behavior or practice? How do I get involved in that, or not maybe? Or how does it affect me? Imagining, that second stage of imagining is thinking, how could this be? How could it be? And maybe drawing on the Bible or on things that you know about Christianity, you try and think of it and think, well, what could this look like? What does the Bible have to say about this aspect of life? What's good about it? What can I affirm? But also, what might I be critical about it in some ways? And then you begin to think about creating. You think about, well, as I re-engage, as I think about, well, how do I want to be as a disciple of Jesus in that? What needs, and I'll tease this out later on, but what needs watering and what needs weeding and what needs weaving? What needs watering, as in, what do I think is good about this and therefore I'd want to encourage? What's good about my practice in this area and what do I encourage? What do I want to weed out, take away, and what new things do I want to weave into it? And then in the communicate, we begin to think, well, how can this part of culture, how can it help me to share the gospel or help us share the gospel as we go about our ordinary everyday lives? Now, the other day we used, if you've got your phone with you, you can take your phone out. We had a go at using something called Mentimeter. And Mark, if you're leading this from the back, mine's already on. It looks like I need to go back a slide, but I don't know. That might be. I can't remember which way around I did this. Does it need to go back or not? Oh, you changed it already anyway. Oh, you're there. You start. You're on it. Yeah, if you want to go to menti.com, if you've got a phone, go to menti.com, type in 78581673, and that should take you to this presentation for tonight. Don't worry if this is just as we try and, the church is just trying to develop this as a way of perhaps interacting, as a way of hearing from different people. Don't worry, don't feel left out if you're not doing it. Just see how that, oh, look at that, all those lovely hearts going up. That's beautiful. People are getting onto it. Oh, look, it even tells me how many people are joining. 12, 14 people getting on. Okay, Mark, I think we could go to the next slide. So, just as a vote, which social media sites do you tend to use? So just vote. I don't know how you set it up, Mark, whether you can vote for more than one, but just click on which ones, starting perhaps with the one that you use most. Click it and submit it. Which ones do you use? I don't know if it'll allow, it allows you to use one. All right, vote for the most popular one. And then submit it. And we'll get a picture of which ones people use. Ooh. There you go, it starts to show you. So, we've got one, that's good. So some people on YouTube, one person on TikTok, about 8 on WhatsApp. Most popular so far is Instagram. Keep voting if you're finding your way there. Pinterest. Oh, somebody's like, yes, Pinterest for my hobbies or whatever. That's probably Steve Lane with his knitting, I imagine. You know, I just look at it. Is Steve even here tonight? Bless him, he made me Portuguese tart, so I shouldn't make fun of him. Facebook, it looks like the most popular social media channel in the room for those who are voting on phones is Instagram. I know some of you are thinking, I don't even know what Instagram is. My mum's put TikTok, I can see that. That's great. Glad she was honest about that. So WhatsApp and Instagram, kind of most popular. Facebook coming in, then all YouTube's going up again a little bit. That's quite interesting spread. Okay, just good to see that. Let's go on to the next slide, Mark. And then this now is I want you to vote in terms of whether you think social media is a good thing or not. So strongly disagree or strongly agree. Is social media a good thing or a bad thing? So you make your vote. I'm an old man, I'm still trying to work out how to use it. Hang on. Oh, I see. Okay. Got it. Ooh. So, this in terms of people that think it's a good thing, they strongly disagree. Gosh, do people just in Frinton sit on the fence about most things? Is that kind of... So that it's a bad thing that, that's interesting. So it's kind of less, it's more towards you disagree that it's a bad thing. So generally thinking it's quite a good thing, that it is a good thing, sitting quite there in the middle. 42 people, or 42 votes at least, about what you think of social media. Interesting, isn't it? Just interesting what people think. Okay, let's move on. Let's start to think then. What we're going to do is we're going to go through this theological reflection, thinking about social media, thinking a little bit about it. Just to say this, I'm not going to say much because I'm well aware that this will get away from us time-wise. But I was looking at a piece of research this afternoon by a lady called Jean Twenge, who did some research on post-millennials. That's, I think, Generation Z, born after 1995. The average adult spends less time outside, and therefore they say nowadays is in one sense safer than their previous generations, but spends an average of 6 hours a day in front of one of these, some sort of a screen. 6 hours of their day. That's 40% of their waking lives. 40% of their waking lives in front of some sort of screen. Shocking, isn't it? Or it's interesting, if nothing else. It makes you wonder what's really shaping us. One of the guys that started Facebook has actually not only come off it, but now would encourage his family to completely abstain from it because he realized it's what they call these guys are going for the attention culture. Who's got your attention? And the thing is with social media sites, particularly like Facebook and Instagram and some of these, ultimately they're not trying to sell you something. You are the product. We are the product. That's what they're dealing in, and they have our attention. So it's that we're trying to reflect on. It's that we're trying to think about. How do we be wise disciples? We've been thinking over this weekend about unmasking our identity, who we are, unmasking that identity and unmasking our purpose. So you have to begin to think, well, then who is shaping my identity or my purpose? So, what we're going to do is go through this cycle, and it'd be really interesting to hear in the room what we think about this. So upstairs, maybe you just want to group together a bit. You can just turn in kind of whatever is natural groups for you. And if you need to shift around a bit, just do so now, just while I have a quick look at my notes and work out what we're doing next. But just have a quick, get yourself ready just to be talking to those that are around you. Don't worry if you don't like talking to others. There'll be somebody in the group who loves to share. So just while you get yourself settled down, just so what time do you want to go home tonight? Just so I want to check, make sure I know, what time do I want to go? That's a very good point. You got 30 seconds, go no. Let's think. Okay, don't worry about that. Okay, we're going to do the listening stage of this, the listening stage. So in your groups, talk about these kind of things. What is happening, and you can talk from a personal perspective. What is happening in your daily life when it comes to social media? Don't be frightened to say, if you're in a group, you say, not very much. How does it affect you? It might not affect you at all, that's fine. Or just speculate. If you're in a group where you think, I'm not so sure I engage with it, but I'm in a group of people where we think, to talk about social media, I imagine you would know what it's about at least. What's happening in the culture around you, do you think? Think about your use of it. How often do you use it, and how does it affect you? Think about what's good about it and what's bad about it. Does that make sense? There's a lot of questions there, wasn't there? Too many questions. Just think about what's going on. All right, let's do it. What's going on with social media? Just start to brainstorm that. What's good about it? What's bad about it? And when you get some ideas, Mark and I will run around really quickly with some post-it notes. We'll throw some upstairs, pen. Just if you've got some ideas and thoughts about your thoughts on what's good, what's bad, what do you notice, come and just bung them on this kind of listen section on here. That would be great. Is that right? Oh, Liz, thank you so much. I'll give you 5 minutes. 1 more minute. If you've got any comments you want to put up, just put them on a post-it note and bring them over. Let's come back together. Come on, Juice. In you go. Oh, we're in. Look at this. I didn't think anybody was on Snapchat. Is it still a thing? That's it. So I said to Mark before we start, I'll do it on here and we'll get all the whole theological reflection on this one page. Look at that lot, in one go. We've got another 3 to go. It's fine. But this is kind of the listening, what's going on in this area. So I won't read everything, but just some of the comments. It's always hard to pick these out in some ways, but why is everyone on Facebook having a good time and I'm not? Like, you know, it's kind of that idea of, like, you know, people post their best lives, don't they, in some ways? It's a waste of time scrolling, especially when tired. How many people are doing that? People's sleep patterns now are dreadful in terms of the amount of time you're in front of a screen. And, you know, I just saying to Mark, sometimes I go on to, I'm going to lie like through my teeth. I go on to TikTok looking for worship music or a sermon or something. Why is that funny? And you end up looking at dancing cats or whatever. Anyway, you know, it's that kind of a thing or whatever. Bad, it's unregulated. That is a huge problem at the moment. Uncomfortable with silence, lack of concentration, understanding your own limits, not to be sucked in, but I hear that. Some of the things going, time-consuming, addictive by design. Somebody says here, a surgeon can use a knife to save a life. Someone else can use it to take a life. Social media is, it says he's something. There's some, I can't quite get that. And sorry, I tried. Facebook is a great way of keeping up with family and friends and so on, so it has that kind of positive. So we hear damaging our mental health, affects mostly negative. So just listening to it. You hear the mix, don't you? You hear the mix of both. But listening. Not many people but you could, if you were using these, you could reflect on, well, what's your use of it? You know, how's it affecting you? I'm sure you know that just even as you think about that. Okay. Let's then brainstorm together in the same groups about the imagined stage. When you think about the imagined stage, perhaps this is the wrong way of asking, but kind of what should be going on? Like, we see that this is both, like everything in life, it has the kind of good, and it has the potential to go in the kind of dark direction. It also has that potential to go towards the light direction, as it were. What's going on? Can you draw at all upon? You might want to get out your phone again for this to kind of do some searching. But what comes to your mind when you think about maybe some of the things we've said over this weekend or what you know of the Bible? You think, what does that have to say about social media? Where in the Bible do I see kind of things that might help me to reflect or think about it? And therefore, again, sort of in that sense, what does the Bible help me to think? What would I affirm in it, or what would I challenge? So use your imagination, but now you're trying to look at it from your faith perspective. How does your faith look at this and think about it? Have a think about that. Let a chat start to happen. Again, I'll turn the page actually for this one. We'll do it in that way, but come and stick your post-it notes on when you're ready. 5 minutes. notes you want to bring to the front or drop down from the balcony, we'll come and grab them if that helps. Throw them down. I've got some already. Pop them on there. So again, when you're trying to think through anything, when you're listening to what's going on in the world around you, it's just a great way of being able to think things through, just that listening phase and now imagining. So you could, we're doing it very quick and kind of broad brushstroke this evening, but you're trying to think, what do I know of either the Bible or of Christian tradition in the sense of my reading? What would I apply to this? So you're always applying it in different kinds of ways. What's brilliant about it, I think, this evening is just seeing, we're doing this as a whole family. It's people commenting from all different age groups, which I think is so powerful. So here you've got in this second phase thinking and imagining and trying to think, well, what does my faith say about this? What would I affirm? What would I challenge and so on? Let's see some of the comments that we've got here. So we've got positive posts, sharing hobbies. So it has that kind of element to it. We can encourage each other. Social media is to bring glory to God across the world. So it has that potential to spread the gospel in an incredible way. Somebody was saying to me as they came up just how, that Jesus won't come again till the whole world knows. And you think, have we been given this tool in a way that enables that kind of thing to happen? Josie with a late... I didn't mean to point that out. It's just, What's that say? Fake looks become natural. What God says about... fake looks. Okay, cool. Use our judgment to harness the positive. There's a couple of scriptures on here about Paul talks about, thinking about whatever is lovely, whatever is pure and so on. Somebody was honest enough, where was it feeling bad about? Oh, where did that go? Here. There we go. We feel guilty for finding inappropriate stuff funny. So it's just people beginning to reflect and imagine, what does this particular aspect of culture look like as I try to apply my faith, God's word, to it? Okay. Now in this next bit, which is creating, we're beginning now to think about what practices, what habits could we build into our lives that help us live as wise disciples when it comes to this particular thing? And this is where, and I think this little framework is absolutely brilliant. It's very simple, and you can apply it in a number of different ways. What needs watering, and what needs weeding, and what needs weaving? What needs watering in this area where you'd say, actually, because some of these were really positive, you think, well, why would you not water those? Why would you not water them as a community? How could you use social media to encourage and disciple and spread the gospel? But what needs weeding? What do you think kind of, oh man, some of our habits, my habits in this area are not healthy. I need to stop doing that. That I need that out of my life. Even just a recognition of it. And then what needs weaving in? What would be the little practice? So a little practice like we did this the other day. It's good to have physical things you actually do. So, like we put these little rings on. Those of us here on Friday, we've got these little rubber rings. If you're still wearing it, it was reminding us of the prodigal son story and how we are children of God. So, are there little things, are there creative ideas you could use, that creative little practices that help you be a little bit more careful around social media? That would be great if one or two of the groups would come up with that. What creative things could you do that remind you daily to be careful with social media in terms of how you use it? So, just for, again, 5 minutes, create. Think about those, what needs, you might want to do it in that way, what needs watering, what needs weeding, what needs weaving. Thank you, Mark, for catching me up to that. That's brilliant. So they're up there. What kind of practices could you put in place? 5 minutes, go, talk to each other. write down some ideas, come stick them on the board at the front. That'd be great. What artwork have you... Oh, you're going there with it? Fair enough. Oh, we'll put it right in the middle then, you know. Right in the... Which one are you going to put it on there? Oh, here, this one. Oh, here. Perfect. Yeah, same. Yeah. Perfect. Perfect. Okay, perfect. Oh, hello. I'm trying to remember this time. What's it say? Time of... Kind of the idea of limiting your... No, I see, yeah. It's my wife's apparently. Weaving, but they're using one screen. What, on different screens? How many different... I had 3 screens on the go the other night. But then I was watching the boxing and the tennis and something else. Oh. I thought he'd turn up. It was a bit of a nightmare. Okay, let's come back. If you've got others you can put up here, it's great. So we've got some of these sorts of things. It's interesting, isn't it? So we've gone through listening to what's going on, imagining it. Now we're thinking, okay, create. What needs watering and weeding and weaving in this kind of area? So there's things like, people are saying things like, well, put time limits enforced by software. And there are things that are available to limit the amount of time that we spend. Like, I don't know if you get reports sometimes, don't you, in terms of the amount of time you spend on social media. Some have put things like, what would Jesus watch? That might be a good kind of post-it to put on your kind of, your computer screen, wouldn't it? To kind of put that up somewhere in some creative way. The idea of using a timer to limit it, to pray before you go on social media, to try and develop habits of encouraging people and congratulating people as they do what they do, incoming the latest wisdom. Don't let social media distract you from the words, from the Lord's work on your front line. So just some of those kind of habits. And I think just trying to get creative around the habits that you have. Of course, it's getting longer to go around. Hang on. I'm coming. But I think, and we don't do this brilliantly successfully at home, but things like at dinner time, like we're still in that kind of family season of life, just about with Jacko at home, but we just say like no phones around the dinner table. It's just so easy to kind of, because they're always dinging, aren't they? And you just think, no, just put them away. Just make it a thing somehow in the culture of your family, or if you live with others, just kind of like some basket, all put it in there while we eat together. That might be one. Or even a lot of people are talking today about, there was a generation or an era where if we ever thought about trying something like fasting, we might fast from food. But now they say, have a social media fast. Because what's that? There's a word for when people get anxiety from being away from their phone. Was it called FOMO? Like kind of the fear of missing out. I think there's another word as well. But it's just that fear of when I'm away from my phone. Or if somebody loses their phone, it's like they get really anxious. And just thinking, well, what would a social media fast look like for you? Or if you're the generation where it's like, well, this is not an issue for me. It may be because the thing they used to talk about a little bit more was television. The same thing, that box in the corner was to take our attention. And in our church community, people seem to know more about Coronation Street or EastEnders or what's going on in the story of that than they do about maybe some more, not that those, I mean, they can be a reflection of life. I don't want to diss those completely, but, you know, the television still takes our attention, doesn't it? So can you form kind of creative type habits that every day, and it's really good to make those creative practices some kind of physical thing that you do. I was saying to Mark that this little thing of watering, weeding and weaving, I did this as part of a course, and one of the areas we looked at was play. Now, I don't really, well, I do play. I play sport. I play squash and I go running. So what I did for a while, I put a piece of paper in my running shoe. So I'm going to say so that every morning when I came down to run, I run twice a week, not every morning. But when I came down to put my running shoes on, I took the piece of paper out and it just said on it, in terms of what needs watering as I go running today, what needs watering was that I thought, well, why don't I try and smile at other runners or other people in the park as I go around? What needs weeding? Well, often in the park I run in around Tooting Common, where I live, you know, you see a bit of rubbish. You think, well, why don't I just pick some of that rubbish up? The only trouble around Tooting is there's so much rubbish by the time you're kind of like... Anyway, but it's kind of just being conscious of that. And what needs weaving? Other things can I kind of weave into my run? Well, one of the things was that I'll pray sometimes as I go running. So I'll pass a person, and I don't know them or their day, but I see them going off to work, and I just ask God to bless them. And often when I get home from running, I'll walk up our street where we live, and we know most of our neighbours, so I'll just pray for every single house as I walk back up to the house, generally completely out of breath and crawling up the street, but that's what I'll do. It's just putting those kind of bodily like habits and practices to try and change something. So try and be creative when you're thinking about that. So last one. So we thought about listening and imagining and creating, and you kind of begun to touch on this already. Let's think about this communicating. And this is, in theological reflection, this is, well, how does this aspect of culture help us communicate and share the gospel? Now, you've already begun to touch on this, so we might not need so long on it, but just have a think about it. Try and think, and I thought about doing it in this way. Mark, could you click on, see, I think I put 3 suggestions up, just in case some people want to think about it this way. How could you use those particular social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok, how could you use those to communicate the gospel? Because they're quite different, they have different audiences, you can use them in different ways. Just give yourselves, maybe I'll just give you 3 minutes on that. Just have a think about how we could use this aspect of culture to spread the gospel. Go for it. 3 minutes. to add in this, just get them on your post-it note, come and put them up on the sheet, that would be fantastic. Let's come back together. So, and just to say, just being honest with you, I'm on a course at the moment. It's one of LICC's courses, but I'm doing it from, not because I work for them, but personally on everyday theology. Because genuinely, when I was some of these young people's age, I wish somebody had taught me to think about what's going on around me. Because I think my generation, we weren't taught to think for ourselves, and sometimes our church culture doesn't. It kind of, somebody tells us what to think, and we're left, I don't know how to think for myself. This needs practicing. I wouldn't just do this as a one-off. I've only just started practicing this myself as a way of trying to think about. You could go and watch a film together and then go, okay, let's put it through this. As I say, you could do it with pretty much anything as a way of just thinking things through. And this last bit then about communicating, for whatever reason, when Dave developed this particular way of theologically reflecting, because you can do it in a number of ways, he thought, well then, how does this particular aspect then help us to go out and communicate the gospel with others? So people have said things like, well, commit to posting truthful images. That's a powerful one. Somebody said about we should repost things using the channels for things like advertising Alpha and so on in Christian events. Somebody said about connecting with community groups. So in your area, it's a way in which a church community can engage with other community groups or networks that exist within the Frinton and kind of tendering area in different ways. Appealing to a target audience, so it's a way that you can, because different age groups are on different things, aren't they? So you've got to tailor it towards whether it's Facebook, TikTok, or whatever it is. You've got to do it in that way. And then somebody put a lovely note up which said here, unroll, and so I unrolled it. It said, "Thank you for coming to our church and talking to us about all of this. It has really made me think, and I've learned much more." Isn't that lovely? Thanks, Lisa. That's lovely. No, it wasn't Lisa. It wasn't Lisa. On Friday, if you weren't with us, on Friday I was talking about the prodigal son. Quite a familiar story, but I was saying about how the Father redresses us every. I was saying it wasn't a kind of one-time event. That I come home to the Father probably on a daily basis. And I was saying how every day when I go out into my life, I think the culture around us tries to strip us of our identity. You know, the Father wraps the Son in this robe that reminds him of who he is in Christ. And we're wrapped in that we're our Father's, as it were. And he puts that ring on his finger, that signet ring. Do you remember? We said it was about trust. The Father was saying, "I trust you." You know, the ring was used to kind of be a seal in communications. And the Father was saying, "Look, I know you feel like you've really let me down, but I give you this ring to say, I trust you again. Go out and live for me and be my ambassador." And then when he put the shoes on his feet, he was saying that you're my son. You know, the servants didn't wear shoes, but you're my son. I don't know about you, and I find this, particularly with social media, you can go out into that world and it will pull the kind of identity off of you in all sorts of ways. And I just think it's interesting, isn't it? We come towards the end and we theologically reflect on this in some ways. That's what we're doing. Theological reflection is thinking, God, what do you have to say about this? That's all it is. It sounds, it's just, God, what do you have to say about this? What does your word have to say about this? And we've done it together. And there's some brilliant comments, right from the youngest through to some of the older ones here tonight, as you think together as a community. So Lisa's going to come up with the musicians and sing, and as they just get ready to do that,